symbol of the Confederacy and of the war to preserve slavery, no longer overlooks Richmond, Virginia. Workers removing the towering statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee from its pedestal. More now from CNN's Joe Johns.
After 131 years on display, the city of Richmond, Virginia says goodbye to a monument that's been a source of controversy for decades. This statue of Robert E. Lee, the largest Confederate statue that was still standing in the U.S., was erected in 1890, more than a generation after the Civil War. But today, it came down. A heavy-duty crane lifted the 12-ton Confederate general and his horse from its pedestal, cut into huge pieces for storage at a secure location. For many in the crowd, this day could have come sooner.
It's hatred, and I do not like hatred, period.
Getting to this point was a monumental battle. The controversy surrounding it was amplified by the Black Lives Matter protests last year. And while Confederate monuments in other parts of the U.S. came down, including in nearby Charlottesville, in Richmond, once the capital of the Confederacy, it took all three branches of government speaking with the same voice to overcome legal obstacles to removal.
Yes, that statue has been there for a long time. But it was wrong then, and it is wrong now.
The legislature passed a provision supporting the removal. And finally, last week, the Virginia Supreme Court threw out a challenge from some residents in the district and the descendants of the families who donated the property for the monument.
There's a lot of pain in this statue, you know, in the bottom half especially now. There's a lot of words in there.
But today also renews conversations over whether removing Confederate statues is an attempt to rewrite or even erase the United States' troubled racial history. At the end of the day, the statue and its removal equally symbolic. The old Richmond coming down and the new Richmond ascendant.
This is a very powerful place now. It's transformed into a powerful place.
Joe Johns, CNN, Richmond, Virginia.
Joe Johns, thank you very much for that. I want to bring in now CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers. Hey, Bakari, thanks for joining me this evening. You remember being there when that Confederate flag came down, right, in your state, and now here we are. So you said that even though you're glad that this racist symbol came down, racism exists, even if you paint all the streets with Black Lives Matter. But does today help move forward the conversation about how we address race and our history in this country?
Unfortunately, I don't think it does. I mean, I'm someone who believes that statues of Robert E. Lee should come down. I mean, especially shout out to Mayor Landrieu, who's one of our colleagues. Shout out to all of those individuals who have led the charge to take these statues down. But the battle for many of us is systemic racism. The battle for many of us is the racism that's ingrained into the systems in this country. And we're having a debate right now in 2021 about the legacy of Robert E. Lee. I mean, let's think about that. And there are people who are going to misquote his legacy and say that in 1856 he wrote a letter that said that slavery was both a political and moral evil, but they won't do the ... and talk about what he said after that in that letter. They won't talk about the fact that he believed that blacks were better off under the subjugation and enslavement of their white masters than they would be otherwise. They don't talk about the fact that he thought that the only way that we could get free or have our freedom or emancipation was divine intervention. They don't talk about the fact that Robert E. Lee was a slave owner himself, and they don't talk about the fact that he led his soldiers into one of the largest slaughters that we've had in the history of the United States of America. And so it's frustrating that we're talking about Robert E. Lee. On the other hand, we can't teach America's history through what is now known as critical race theory. And so we're sitting here taking down statues, and black folk and brown folk and poor folk are still being oppressed.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of willful ignorance when it comes to the history of this country, and a lot of it is a refusal for it to be taught. And most people, when you say critical race theory, the people who are fighting against, they have no idea what it is. If you ask them what it was, they would have no idea. So
I mean, listen, you're right, but you know, the fact is, you have people who are this is why, let me start over this sentence. This is why controlling your own narrative is so important.
Right.
And for Black folk in this country, we have not been able to write our own stories. We have not been able to share our own history. That's why it's so important. When people like to lift up Robert E. Lee on the pedestal, I have to remind them that Robert E. Lee fought to make sure that they can enslave Black Americans. That was his fight. That was his purpose, so that me and you would be in bondage. Do you know Robert E. Lee is rolling over like 6, 7, 8 times during this segment right now?
Robert E. Lee fought against a more perfect union, right? And so, I mean, remember
There's
that
no question.
for everything that we hold dear. And you know, look, there is no defending Robert E. Lee or his legacy or what have you.
You should tell some people that.
It's just dumb. I mean, that's it. And look, history is also, as you say, in large part about who is telling the story, right? And so if you tell the story, chances are you're going to tell the story that makes the people.
But let me just
look good. I got to ask you this though before you, because I want to get it in.
Sure.
The former president put out a statement today condemning the removal of this statue. He says that our culture, our history, and our heritage are being destroyed. That the country is suffering an embarrassment because we don't have the genius of a Robert E. Lee. Okay, exactly what culture and history is he talking about?
Listen, Robert E. Lee was a racist and he was a loser. Donald Trump
That's
is a
my
racist
response.
and
Like,
he's a
I
loser.
don't. What the hell? What in the hell is he talking? Like,
I'm sorry. But the fact that you put that out,
yeah.
I don't know. But can I answer a totally other question that I want to answer? Because you have 2 losers, 2 races that get along.
I love
So
it
my
when
only
you
point
don't like. Listen, I love it. I don't like giving ignorant people a platform, and so thank you for that answer. It was right on point. Go on.
Look, the fact is, and I say this oftentimes because I'm blessed and fortunate enough to have this platform. But we have to have a larger vision than taking down symbols.
Yes.
In my life, I don't want to make the person who makes yellow paint rich. The people who are out here painting Black Lives Matter in yellow paint, I'm with you. But that's just not my ministry. Yeah. My ministry is going in here to make sure that we change these systems that put Black kids and brown kids in schools that are falling apart, that are putting Black communities in places where they don't drink clean water, don't have clean air, and where we have a criminal justice system that's incarcerating us multiple times in comparison to our white colleagues.
Right to vote.
And so, and that is the largest, and that was my last thing. And where you have a new Jim Crow, where it makes it more difficult for us to exercise that franchise. And so, yes, I'm very proud of what happened, and I don't want to minimize what happened in Virginia. But what I am saying is that we got bigger fish to fry if we all gonna be free.
I got you. Thank you, Bakari Sellers. I'll see you later.
Thank you, my brother.
We'll be right